Alrighty. Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Monday night live stream for week 13 now of the 2025 fantasy football season. I hope you guys are doing well. I thought Thursday games were boring. Man, this was one of the worst games I've seen all year. Oh my goodness. I mean, it is insane how in just one 8-day period, the Carolina Panthers can go from actually being a functionable offense to forgetting how to function. It is quite the interesting dynamic and, of course, turnaround for this. For the sake of somebody like a Rico Dowdle, unfortunate for someone like Tedero McMillan, should have had a lot more opportunity over the course of that game. But all in all, it is what it is. We have to keep rolling with the punches and hope that, of course, this next week brings a little bit more juice in regards to some of these games. It was a very low-scoring week, to say the very least. I mean, again, yeah, just in itself, Brock Purdy throwing 3 picks. I mean, my goodness, what a way to really give us a fun Monday night experience. Anyway, hope you guys are doing well. Earlier today, we talked about some waiver wire pickups going into this given week. Of course, Devin Neal, the top of that conversation, alongside of someone like Bretton Strange, the thumbnail of today's live stream. These are two players that, again, if you are in need of running back and or tight end, kind of reserves and or potential starters going forward, hopefully can be available in your upcoming leagues. But, of course, going into week 13, there are no teams on bye, so everybody should be at a full capacity. You should probably be preparing for week 14 pickups in regards to players who will be missing, such as the Carolina Panthers, the 49ers, New England Patriots. Again, many of studs along with those teams that will not be available come week 14. So, of course, we'll prepare for that. But anyway, I'm here to answer questions. So, of course, we will get into the live stream chat answering questions. If you guys want to claim priority, you can send in a super chat. Otherwise, if you guys have a question, be sure to go ahead and include your scoring format. It is greatly appreciated. As long as you add the context, it'll be easier for myself and, of course, other members to answer said questions. Somebody said Stafford or Prescott rest the season. The way in which both of these quarterbacks are playing, I feel like there isn't really technically a wrong answer. I feel like both are going to continue to ball. I mean, obviously, I think what Matthew Stafford is doing in terms of his pace of play, in terms of just consistency of 3+ touchdowns. He's had 3 or more passing touchdowns in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the last 8 games. Like that alone, on top of the schedule ahead with Carolina, Arizona, Detroit, the next 3 weeks here. And then you have Seattle week 16, which is a little bit sketchy. And then you have Atlanta week 17. I feel like he torches the entire crew except for that singular game against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. Could be a weather game as well. That could be a little bit tricky. Looking at the schedule for Dak Prescott, I don't look at the schedule and think he has any difficulties ahead. Kansas City this week will be the biggest test, but then you go forward towards Detroit, Minnesota, the Los Angeles Chargers, and Washington. I feel like every single game there, he's going to be tearing it apart. So ultimately, it's just purely a matter of who you want to hitch your wagon to. The Rams at the top of the pack, absolutely annihilating everybody on the offensive and defensive side, or the quarterback who doesn't have as great of a defense effectively. Either which way you want to go about it, you're going to find success. If it's me personally, I probably stick with the hot hand and roll with Stafford in this circumstance. Thank you. All right, let's go ahead. Let's see what we have here in regards to some super chat questions. And then once we've hit those, we'll get into the live chat and, of course, cover everything that you guys have to ask in regards to the beginning of week 13. All right, we begin with Blazin540, who says, drop Worthy for Jaden Higgins. At this point, again, Xavier Worthy's overall utilization hasn't gotten to the point to where I'm very much so confident in the expression of which we are going to get huge performances. Sure, this week they take on the Dallas Cowboys, Thursday night, Thanksgiving Day football, which could be exciting. But I think the opportunity share of what Jaden Higgins has presented, like I mentioned earlier today, for the last 5 games of 7 or more targets, I feel like that is something that I'm very much so excited about hitching the wagon to, per se, and an offense that, again, and a team that has won 3 games in a row and they're trying to make a wild card push. I don't mind the idea of going after Higgins. Again, he's getting red zone utilization. He's become the clear and away number 2 wide receiver in terms of routes ran. And additionally, on top of that, in terms of snaps to the wide receiver position on his team, I'm excited about his potential there. Obviously, conventional wisdom will tell you to just keep Worthy because, anytime you drop a player of that caliber, they pop off the next week. I told people, hey, we should probably look to kind of go away from DJ Moore. He hasn't been great in quite a while. DJ Moore had gone on a streak of quite literally producing in a half PPR 0 points and then 2.6 points, and it had 1 game of over 10 fantasy points in like the last 2 months. And then all of a sudden, as soon as we're like, yeah, you know what, we don't need him. he goes for 2 tighties the next game. Of course he does, because why wouldn't he? That's just the reality of the situation. But yeah, I like the idea of going after Jaden Higgins there. So I was worried about Justin Jefferson. Adunze will continue to slide down in the stretch. Justin Jefferson, yes, I am very much so worried about. Again, the quarterback play there is such a deficiency, and I'm hoping that again. Okay, so I'm hoping the injury that JJ McCarthy sustained on Sunday isn't significant, but I'm also hoping it's significant enough to where they bench him in a soft benching kind of way, just to give that third string quarterback a chance. Because even Nick Mullins in this offense, guys, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nick Mullins. He's been a backup quarterback in the National Football League for many of years. He bounced around, was a starter for the San Francisco 49ers one of those years when, I think it was like 2021. Maybe it was earlier. Maybe it was like 2019. I don't know. Actually, let me look this up. Maybe it's 2018. Yeah, it was 2018 that he was in the 49ers organization. But anyway, when we look back at a couple years ago, there was some Nick Mullins games there within this Vikings organization in 2023 where this man legitimately came out and threw for 303 and 2 touchdowns, 411 and 2 touchdowns, 396 and 2 touchdowns. I don't even think that I think the third string quarterback of this team would play better than JJ McCarthy. I'm sure of it. All right, moving on. Blaze sends it a question. Says, what's your thoughts on JT rest of the season? Well, of course, we knew that the schedule for JT was going to get more difficult. Objectively, we knew this. Again, we looked at the rest of season strength of the schedule early on in terms of running back rushing statistics allowed, and we knew, okay, there's going to be an upcoming trend ahead where he's going to be really put to the test, where we're going to hope that, of course, his skill level and the offensive line skill is going to be able to, of course, overcompensate for the upcoming matchups, which, I mean, going forward, taking on Houston, Jacksonville, Seattle, San Francisco, Jacksonville, I'm not too concerned about it. I know that these are solid matchups in terms of run-stopping capabilities, but when we're talking about the talent level of someone like Jonathan Taylor, if you give him 20 rushing attempts, he's going to be able to go off. I'm not too worried about it. Again, I think there is a couple conversations to be had regarding that Seattle game week 15. Could be a little bit of a troublesome situation, but if it's a good offense and they score, you would assume that Jonathan Taylor, if anybody in the red zone, is going to find themselves scoring that touchdown. So I'm not too worried about it. I know that there is a little bit of concern that should be had because, again, a lot of the teams like Houston, Seattle, etc., Jacksonville are pretty good in terms of stopping the run. I think Jonathan Taylor's talent will be able to kind of just compensate for that. Thank you. GBG Tony says Discord. Okay, I don't want to open it up on my computer, so I'll have to check on my phone. If I try to check on the computer when I'm live streaming, kind of makes the entire thing lag a little bit. So let me go ahead and let me see this. I wasn't able to, unfortunately, check out Discord messages earlier today. Let me see here. It says, wow, so I lost pretty badly, but just got offered Christian McCaffrey and Olave for George Kittle and CeeDee Lamb. I'm 6-6, and I'm needing to win out these last 2 weeks to have a chance to get in. The guy I play in a couple weeks has Christian McCaffrey, so I'll be without him that week if I were to accept, but he'd also be without Kittle. Curious what you think. This is the team for reference. He also has Waddle. Maybe ask for Waddle instead of not sure. Who do you prefer rest of the season? Maybe Kittle and Lamb is too much value. Not sure. Just seen Christian McCaffrey and got excited. Okay, so really quickly, depending on what your overall situation here is, GBG Tony, in regards to like the standings in your league. If you can get an opportunity to send me a picture of the standings in your league by tomorrow, I think we'll get a better or clearer picture on the entire landscape of how many victories you'll need to kind of pull out here just to find kind of the potential of winning. Just looking at the team as a whole, in terms of the potential of trading away Kittle and having Gadsden as the backup, I don't mind that. I just am worried primarily of the idea of like when you get to week 14, will making this trade for Christian McCaffrey evidently lose you that week? And then by losing that week, does it evidently knock you out for the season? I think that's purely just what I want to know. If you can send me a screenshot of your league standings, even right now, just so I have an idea as to where you're at after the loss, that'd be appreciated, just so I know like how many teams are vying for that final playoff position within your league, just so we know if it's actually the right move. Because for right now, I'm thinking it's not the right move. I'd rather just hold what you have because you have the backup of Gadsden for Kittle. You'll be okay week 14, and you'll probably end up winning if you hold. Thank you. All right, Blazing 540 says start Lamar or Burrow. I mean, at this point, the Lamar Jackson that I have seen over the course of the last 2 weeks is not the Lamar Jackson that I know of. Obviously, he is still dealing with a bit of an injury. It does not look like the normal Lamar Jackson out there. So ultimately, I feel like, am I crazy to say that I want to play Joe Burrow in this circumstance? Like, if the team that played against the Houston Texans and effectively the New York Jets come out and play against the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday night, I think the Bengals legitimately have a chance to win. So I want to play Burrow. I know Lamar has an incredible track record against the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, genuinely, last season against them, had 4 passing touchdowns in each of the matchups against them. So as of right now, I want to play Burrow. History tells us that we should probably play Lamar. So we'll see how we get there by the time, Thursday rolls around. We'll look at Lamar's status. Again, he's a little bit hobbled. So if in fact that's going to be an issue, we'll pivot away potentially. Avram, what's up? Says Texans or Broncos defense for rest of season in a half PPR. Yeah, half PPR doesn't really matter. It's purely just a matter of the schedules ahead. I really like the potential of, let's see here. I think playing both of these defenses blindly for the rest of season is acceptable because of how great they have been, especially Houston of late. 10 plus fantasy points in 4 of the last 6 games, 3 of the last 3. I mean, looking at the entire upcoming schedule ahead, I'm not the biggest fan of them taking on Indianapolis or Kansas City in the next 2 weeks. But for the fantasy playoffs, taking on Arizona, Las Vegas, and the Los Angeles Chargers, I genuinely think the Houston Texans defense wins people's championships this season. So when we look at Denver and in comparison, look at their potential schedule for that upcoming kind of singular stretch, they take on Washington this week and Las Vegas the next week, which is great. So if you're in need of trying to make the fantasy playoffs, I think Denver can help you get there. But then when you get into the fantasy playoffs, they have Green Bay, Jacksonville, Kansas City. Genuinely, I'm not afraid of Green Bay's offense. Jordan Love has not really had the pieces around him offensive line-wise and weapon-wise to where I'm like, immediately afraid of my defense taking them on. I think Denver will probably whoop their ass. And then in regards to the next week after that, when we're talking about the turnover machine that is Trevor Lawrence, he probably gets taken out to the shed as well in that game. So really the only worry is week 17. Ultimately, if I had to pick one of the two, I'd like to play Denver's defense for the remainder of the regular season, then roll Texans for the fantasy playoffs, as I feel like that is the more appropriate approach. If I had to pick one of the two, I'd probably stick with Texans, as they have just been unstoppable in terms of getting to the quarterback. And when you're able to get to the quarterback, those extra points in fantasy in terms of sacks being generated, I think are just too much to pass up on. All right, let's see here. Alda sends in a question. Says, trade Bucky Irving for Bowers. My team is Jalen Hurts, Javonte Williams, Kyron Williams, CeeDee Lamb, JSN, Rashee Rice, Theo Johnson. Bench is Bucky Irving, Aaron Jones, Kenneth Gainwell, and Cade Otton. Okay, so I think there's a couple things that I need to know beforehand. Obviously, I think Bucky Irving could be more valuable than Kyron and Javonte Williams rest of the season. I genuinely do believe that to be the case. If you're playing in a full PPR scoring format, I can understand why you would want to make a trade of this caliber, because the value which you're getting out of Brock Bowers should be 10 plus points per game every single week. But I think that the potential of this offense, like giving him more looks, isn't really going to be the case. Sure, they may scheme it up differently with the new offensive coordinator having fired Chip Kelly yesterday, but am I of the opinion to where I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I need to have Brock Bowers over Theo Johnson effectively? I probably wouldn't. Like, I look at this team and I think to myself, well, who's your flex? Because I'd like to play Buck Irving as that flex every single week here on out. And if you can make this trade to where you're giving away someone like Aaron Jones and another piece, maybe, I mean, it could be a theoretical 2 for 2 in this case, or maybe a 2 for 1, where if they need running back help, maybe you send away Aaron Jones, Kenneth Gainwell, who's played well lately, and Theo Johnson 3 for 1 for Bowers, and see if the depth will kind of get the job done. If not, I think I'd rather keep Bucky and play him as a flexible option, or effectively just because again, when I look at Theo Johnson as a potential prospect himself, when Jackson Dart does come back, he's going to be great himself. He's had 10 plus fantasy points in a full PPR 3 of the last 4 games, especially when we're talking about the most recent games with Jackson Dart. His target opportunity was 6, 8, 7. Like, whenever he's getting that kind of extra opportunity share, I think it's worth keeping what you have going forward, because the schedule for Bucky is just unstoppable in the fantasy playoffs. Shung, what's up? Says, I'm 5-7. Team is in the chat. Any moves I should make? So I have Lamar, Etienne, Henderson, Harvey, David Montgomery, Puka, Rome, Wandale Robinson, Evans, Pearsall, Gadsden, and Strange. Send away Ricky Pearsall for JMO. Any other ideas? If you could theoretically send away Ricky Pearsall for Jamison Williams after Ricky Pearsall has done, quite frankly, nothing. I understand that obviously Jamison Williams is coming off of a goose egg, but that doesn't scare me in any sort of capacity. If you could somehow get rid of Ricky and get JMO in return, you should make that 10 times out of 10. Otherwise, I would probably look to, at a current record of 5-7, we just want to make sure we don't have any players on bye in week 14 because we're going to have to win that week. And looking at your team, I think you're pretty much, you're in trouble with Hendo. That's the issue. I want to keep Hendo, and hopefully you can pick up a victory this upcoming week, week 13, so that in which you don't have to trade away Henderson in order to avoid the potential of him missing week 14. But that's my primary concern there. Maybe there is a conversation to be had in regards to moving Henderson, who again is still going to be the clear and away RB1 of that team in terms of overall touches, had the vast majority in comparison to Ramondre on Sunday. If in fact we can move him and get some equivalent RB depth in return, that could be potentially the move. Outside of that, looking at the squad, I think we need to go pick up another quarterback, because if Lamar doesn't start showing up here soon, we might be in an absolute world of trouble. Obviously, benching Lamar for anybody doesn't really sound, very fun, especially considering that the week that you probably would ever bench him, he ends up going for 40 points. So we hope that he's healthy and can kind of keep it rolling. But for now, in this case, might not be a bad idea to look in that direction. But if you can get JMO, brother, that's just an absolute haul. In regards to what running backs you would theoretically go after, again, we have to just have somebody that's not going to have an upcoming bye here ahead and has very equivalent value to the potential of someone like Henderson. Who, at that point, if Bucky Irving's going to play this week, I'd ship him for Bucky. Just in your case, because of the 5-7 record, Thank you. All right, let's see here. GBT says set standings for context. Okay, thank you. Let me go ahead and check that out. So it says not updated with the loss this week, but this is what's up. Everybody won ahead of me besides Dax. Okay. And then I played the 10th ranked team next week, and the number 1 team the week after is the manager trying to make the deal. Interesting. Okay, so everyone ahead of you won except for the team with the name Dak. Okay, so he's there. We're currently in 7th place. So basically, you're trying to catch that team. You have to genuinely win out, and then also additionally, okay, this is going to be a tight race here. 12 teams and only 6 making the fantasy playoffs. It's a pretty tough standing situation here. A lot of 7 and 4 teams at the top of the heap there. That's crazy. There's a team in your league that only has 1 win. Okay, looking at it as across the board, yeah, I think it's probably in your best interest to not make the trade, because I think if you do make the trade, it does leave you far too susceptible to losing against that number 1 ranked team in week 14. And again, if they're the number 1 ranked team, they've already got a good team. So making sure that they don't have Christian McCaffrey for that week gives you the advantage, clearing away that as you'll have a CeeDee Lamb there in the matchup. I think you're holding. I think the way in which you go about this is not having players with upcoming buys. And even though, yes, you do have George Kittle with an upcoming buy, you do have the availability of Oronde Gadsden to fill in for him. Otherwise, in terms of potential rest of your team, solid across the board, no upcoming buys here. Great players, and I think you should just hold. Derek, thank you. All right, we've caught up effectively. Let me go ahead and let's pop into the live chat. Let's see what you guys have to ask. Let's go ahead and start answering some questions here. What do I do with Lamar and Barkley? Wait till 2026 and hope they're better. Genuinely, I am of the opinion that looking at the overall play of Barkley this season, it feels so. I don't even understand what I'm watching sometimes. Genuinely, Barkley and that offense running the football is one. It almost. Oh man, I don't even want to say it. I don't want to say it. No, I'm not going to say it. Okay. Yeah, let's just wait till 2026, because Barkley, at least point this season, unless he somehow, some way turns it around, with Lane Johnson out, it's not looking pretty. Lamar, of course, that hamstring is probably still bugging him. It's quite the unfortunate reality of late. Starting JMO against the Packers sounds like a bad idea. Starting JMO against the Packers is a bad idea. The thing is, I'm not too afraid of the Packers secondary, especially when Wandale Robinson, Isaiah Hodgins, and a backup quarterback like Jameis Winston can kind of. Sorry, what am I even? Yeah, when they can play as well as they did in that weather game against Green Bay, like I feel like there's still room for where Detroit and Green Bay could put together a shootout of a kind of game here. Otherwise, as of late, Detroit's got a pretty good number there on them. Let's see here. PPR, use number one waiver on Neal. I have JT, Genty, Benson, Vidal, Rodriguez. Can use 2 running backs and 2 flex. I mean, I feel like, okay, so here's the logic here. In the event in which you get Neal, would you ever play him over Genty or JT? Most likely not. Vidal hopefully is not going to be of usage going forward, and hopefully Omarion Hampton will be prepared to come back. But in the event in which he doesn't, Vidal could start a week here. Benson, I'm assuming, comes back soon. The opportunity that backfield has had for running backs like Zonovan Knight, Bam Knight, has been so plentiful to where Benson could be relevant on the return. Rodriguez probably never starts in your league. I feel like just picking up Neal with the number one waiver, it technically does give you more RB depth because eventually Vidal will disappear to the point to where, yeah, I think it is necessary to make the move, but you're only ever doing it just to make sure other teams in your league don't get the bump that Neal could provide. Thank you. Alec Pierce, Christian Watson, Kyle Monangai, full PPR flex rest of the season. I mean, Monangai has been very much so reliant on touchdowns of late. As for Alec Pierce and Christian Watson, again, they're probably in the same boat, but I actually do trust Alec Pierce the most out of this group. You think Christian Kirk's a decent wide receiver pickup for week 14? I have 7 buys that week. Let me see where we have Christian Kirk playing in that game. I believe Houston has a relatively... they take on Kansas City week 14. I don't love the matchup against Kansas City personally. I think Kansas City is probably going to win out for the remainder of the year, so it's probably not the best overall situation there for Christian Kirk. But that being said, I mean, it's purely just a matter of how well is he going to play with the likes of someone of the caliber of CJ Stroud, which earlier this season, they've been okay, like 5, 10, 6 fantasy points in a full PPR. Like that's what you'll be getting out of him, probably 5 to 6 points. If he gets an upside touchdown, perhaps he gets to that 14-point range. But ultimately, that's what you should probably anticipate with Stroud week 14 against Kansas City. 5 to 10 points there max for Christian Kirk. All right, Brother Fred says, hey, Andrew, I'm in a full PPR. I'm 11-1. Should I be concerned about starting Stephon Diggs going forward? No, I wouldn't be concerned about it. Again, one bad week is not a big deal. We have seen on multiple occasions, and what you'll begin to understand for fantasy football is the wide receiver position is the most volatile position in the game. And because of the volatility there, yes, it'll make you question whether or not these players are actually good at the game. But that is not the overall question that you should be asking. The question is which wide receivers have been more consistent than others week over week, and Stephon Diggs is at the top of that conversation. We talked about it over the course of the last couple months here. Stephon Diggs has been one of the most consistent wide receivers in terms of producing 10-plus fantasy points on a weekly basis. So one bad week against Cincinnati in a game in which Drake May did not start off well is not something that I'm going to be too concerned with, especially when he has put up genuinely 10-plus fantasy points in, 2, 4, 6, 7 of the last 9 games. That's the kind of consistency that we can trust going forward. I'm not too worried about it. Against the Giants this week should be solid. Against Buffalo in the beginning of the fantasy playoffs, we remember earlier this season, against Buffalo, 10 catches for 146. Then they take on Baltimore. Then they take on the Jets. I'm not worried about Stephon Diggs one bit. Thank you, sir. Let's see here. Where are we at? Half PPR, should I pick up Neal and play him over Judkins in the flex spot? I don't know if I'm playing him over Judkins per se. I mean, going into this week, in terms of potential matchups ahead, there's always going to be the conversation of if Neal can get himself a high utilization of receiving workload, taking on a Miami run-stop defense that isn't the most potent, yes, there's a possibility in which he could run away with a pretty good overall efficiency of work. But Taysom Hill had like 10 rushing attempts, so I'm still worried about Neal's overall usage in this circumstance. But against someone like technically Judkins, who could very easily in any given week be donated touchdowns like he was recently, as long as Judkins is healthy, he probably takes the cake there. Kjork, have you ever considered doing Dynasty content? Why or why not? Thanks, man. Nice beard. Thanks, man. As of right now, have I ever considered it? Yes, I've considered it. Is it something that I am my most interest? I mean, look, okay, so purely it's just a matter of like, how much does it interest me? Because the amount of volume of time and effort that it takes is something that I have to weigh in terms of, is that something that I want to put my time and effort towards, or do I want to put it towards the potential of redraft kind of content? So ultimately, yes, there is a very plentiful and long off season, but I think it's just purely a matter of the desire to want to do it. If the desire comes to where like I feel passionate about it, then I'll do it. But otherwise, I probably won't, because I don't want to ever position myself into doing something that I'm not ultimately the most passionate about, because I feel like the content itself would speak to that, right? So I've always been very careful in terms of like, I don't want to ever position myself to do something just to do it, rather than do it because I want to. So right now, haven't really had the desire. I don't play in too many dynasty formats myself, so it's really just become a matter of where, as of right now, just purely redraft. And if it ever changes, I'll be sure to let y'all know. Thank you. Thoughts on Tyler Warren versus Loveland rest of the season? Look, Loveland still has so many competitors within that offense in terms of targets, right? I understand he's coming off a week of scoring a touchdown, which I love. It's great to see that. And this week they take on Philly, which, again, if it wasn't for a couple of inaccurate passes, we would have seen Ferguson come away with a great week in his most recent game against the Eagles. But ultimately, like, Tyler Warren is still Tyler Warren. I understand that he's not coming off of the greatest overall performance, but I think going forward, the consistency of play and target opportunity that we have seen, there isn't another effective tight end competing for snaps, more or less touches within the offense. Tyler Warren is still the number one, but again, I wouldn't mind having both on roster going forward. Full PPR, 12 teams, and there's 8 of us all within a game of each other. There's the last 2 weeks are going to be crucial. Yeah, I would say that's the exact same thing for a lot of the leagues that I play in. The next 2 weeks here is going to determine, quite frankly, everything. Everyone is 1 to 2 games away for the final playoff spot. The way that one of my leagues, at least my main home league, which I play, the final playoff spot. So let's say, for example, there's 6 teams that make the playoffs. 5 of them get in based on win-loss record. And in the number 6 team, the very final team to make the playoffs, is of the bottom 7 teams who has the most points scored for. It's not a matter of the schedule screwing you over. It's purely just a matter of who has the best team gets the final playoff spot. And then, of course, first 2 teams get a bye and keep it moving. All right, so let me go ahead. There was a couple more super chats sent in. Let me catch to those real quick. TPD45 says, how bad is Rice's hammy? From what I was able to kind of understand based on kind of the representation of what we saw, him coming back into the game is notably enough, in my opinion, a good sign. If there was going to be a situation in which Rashee Rice misses this week because of the short week, again, many of us who have him on roster may have to look to send him away because they unfortunately play a short week Thursday game. But from what I've understood, because he returned to the game, I think he'll be perfectly fine to play. Again, still barring a potential Wednesday practice report. Once we get the clear indication there, we'll have an understanding as to how actually impactful it may be. Says I also have Jefferson, Ibuka, and Diggs. And okay, so considering you have, well, look, here's your issue, right? You have Jefferson, who's going to maybe be with a third-string quarterback this week. You're going to have Ibuka, who's going to be with a second-string quarterback maybe this week if Baker's shoulder, who did have an MRI earlier today, isn't at a full capacity. And then you have Diggs, which is great, but has a Week 14 bye. You might be in a little bit of a shitty situation here coming in real quick here. So I don't like any of these quarterbacks either. If the trade opportunities are available for you, maybe we're looking to try to pivot off of some of these players in the meanwhile to order kind of at least give ourselves a better chance for the future, because otherwise, yes, I do agree that these quarterbacks here associated, Teddy Bridgewater and the third stringer for the Vikings, those are sketchy circumstances there. Ibrahim sends in a question, says, should I be worried about Lamar in the playoffs? Also, do you Olave and Javonte playoff schedule are juicy? I think you meant also, do you think Olave and Javante's playoff schedules are juicy? Okay, let's go look at their schedules, and I'll let you know right now. Looking at Javonte Williams, in regards to his upcoming schedule for the fantasy playoffs, taking on Minnesota, the Los Angeles Chargers, and Washington. I mean, genuinely, those are 3 of the, I would say the Los Angeles Chargers and Washington matchup I'm incredibly excited for. But based on what I just saw from Emmanuel Wilson against the Minnesota Vikings run-stop defense, if their offense can't move the football because of J.J. McCarthy, I feel like Javonte is in line for an incredible fantasy playoff stretch there. Now, in regards to Olave, let's see where he's at in terms of his fantasy playoff scheduling. I mean, regardless of the fact that, again, his quarterback isn't the best, at least he's getting number 1 target opportunity share, which in the fantasy playoffs, he'll be taking on Carolina, which, again, recently with Tyler Shuck, he was able to have himself a great game of over 100 yards and a touchdown. I understand the cornerback fell down and it gave him a 50-yard touchdown for free. But again, you got to have to run every route, and, mistakes are going to happen. But ultimately, I'm not worried too much about Olave's overall contributions there. I look at the New York Jets matchup. I'm not too concerned about that either. And then you have Tennessee, genuinely 3 solid matchups here, to which whether it ends up being a positive or negative script on their hands, we'll see enough viability in terms of the overall utilization of Chris Olave to be solid there. So yeah, I think they're in a solid spot. Should I be worried about Lamar? And also thoughts on Wanda Robinson. Well, Wanda Robinson is going to continue to be great because they have one of the easiest strength of schedules themselves at the wide receiver position rest of the season. And he's obviously been balling out. But in regards to Lamar Jackson, I mean, I have legitimate concerns. Now, is it enough to where I'm like 100% pivoting off of him? No. But I would probably like to try to see if I can have another quarterback on roster just in case. Because if he's not able to deliver this week against Cincinnati, which I'm hoping he's going to, and then he starts the fantasy playoffs with Cincinnati once again in week 15, that would scare me. So this week has a lot of implications in terms of whether we can hold on to that Lamar hope for the beginning of the fantasy playoffs. Again, history would tell us that Lamar Jackson is going to be just fine, but there's always the potential in which this injury that has continued to nag him may hold him out for an upcoming game here if that continues to be an issue. So looking at the most recent update, again, so besides the hamstring, he's got a toe issue. It says Jackson was listed as a non-participant on a Monday's practice estimate due to a toe issue. So as of today, considered a non-participant because of toe. In the event in which, again, if that's a turf toe situation and he can't run, his mobility gets completely altered, it's definitely going to be a negative impact. TPD 45 says Ibuka for Lamb straight up. Oh yeah, I'd be more than happy to go in that direction. Especially with the upcoming schedule for the Dallas Cowboys, the way that their quarterback and team is trending. Dallas looks like they're looking and poised to potentially make a playoff run or at least try to get into the conversation of potentially being in the playoff picture. So with an upcoming schedule of Kansas City this week, I don't love, but henceforth after that, Detroit, Minnesota, the Chargers, Washington, and then the New York Giants. That's as good of a schedule as you could possibly ask for someone like the Dallas Cowboys offense for the remainder of the year. Thank you. All right, let's go back to the live chat, see what you guys had to ask. Tampa Bay offense definitely downgraded with Teddy. Yeah, that's for sure. A lot of field goals. Yep. Start Williams over Purdy moving forward. Caleb Williams over Purdy. I think it depends on matchup. I mean, obviously, Caleb Williams looked great. 3 tutties will take that against Pittsburgh's defense that, again, has played well. Obviously, he made one singular, huge mistake there with, not tucking the ball and, of course, trying to get it out of his hands before TJ Watt sacked him. But I'm not really too worried about that in the overall situation. In terms of the potential here, I think there's a lot of conversations to be had between these two. Bro, no disrespect for anyone here, but watching Bryce Young play is like watching a heart attack. You absolutely, yeah. You know what the thing is, Constantino? Bryce Young, there's just 2 different versions, right? There's the Bryce Young that is not great, and then there's the Bryce Young that is killer. And I don't know how they can stabilize and at least have a middling quarterback. Because he's either really good or he's really bad. And there's no middle ground to where the team around him, like the defense or the running game, can keep him alive. He's just really bad or really good. And that in itself is a detriment to the team every time out. 6 more per passing touchdown. Should I pick up Tua and bench Lamar? I wouldn't go that far. Tua can barely get the offense to move himself. It's pretty much Achane as the engine and Tua as just the facilitator there. Am I considering Caleb over Purdy? Like, when I look at Purdy's schedule for the fantasy playoffs, he's got one of the easiest schedules against Tennessee, Indy, and then Chicago. But in regards to the potential what Caleb Williams will have to face in that kind of stretch of games, looking at Cleveland, Green Bay, and San Francisco, I mean, I feel like he'll be just fine as well. I do think that, again, the supporting cast that surrounds the potential genuinely of Purdy should be better. But I think maybe the rushing upside that Caleb Williams continues to present continues to kind of, isolatedly just make him a better play. But for now, with the upcoming schedules ahead, I'll still lean towards Purdy. Caleb Williams, QB7. This offseason, whenever we had him in like the top 12, people were telling me, Andrew, you're crazy. Listen, Caleb has played a lot better than I thought myself, trust me. But I'm glad to see that he at least kind of, with an offensive line, is able to do something. Gatson or Brenton Strange also have Brian Thomas Jr. Do I play him in my flex? Well, Brian Thomas Jr., I don't know if he's going to be even available this week. There's a potential in which he could be. There's a potential in which he won't be. This week they take on, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they're taking on they're taking on Tennessee. If he's active, I'll play him against Tennessee happily, as soon as he gets a full practice participation. As for the tight end play there, I would prefer to play Gadsden. Thank you. Says, should we go back to McLaughlin since Mayfield is banged up? Should we go back to McLaughlin? My concern is they don't move the ball. That's my concern. I know that Teddy Bridgewater is a good backup quarterback, but what I saw on Sunday against the Rams defense just seemed like a quarterback that was lost out there. So we could go back to McLaughlin in this situation, but I feel like there are better kickers to be had. Sean Gone, what's up? Says, are we worried about Purdy versus Cleveland? Streamer quarterback week 13. Trent Williams versus Myles Garrett. Sack record on the line. I feel like that's pretty fun. If we're going to theoretically position ourselves away from Purdy and you were going to stream a quarterback per se, go get Trevor Lawrence. As to whether that is going to be my official suggestion, I couldn't tell you right now. I know he looked bad. Trust me. Listen, there are many of plays every week where every player looks bad, but that's just because there's the competition that makes you kind of look a little off. It happens. Are the Patriots defense to set it and forget it? Let me look at their upcoming schedule here. So looking at the upcoming schedule for their defense, they have the New York Giants, which are auto set, forget. Then they have Buffalo week 15, which I don't love. And then they have Baltimore week 16. If Lamar is actually good in that game, I don't love. Then they get the Jets in week 17. So in 2 of the next 4, I think they're solid. Otherwise, they have an upcoming bye, Buffalo, Baltimore. So I think I'm positioning myself to probably pivot off of them. All right, let's see here. Hey, Andrew, thank you for Wilson waiver wire, Emmanuel Wilson, Michael Wilson. Yeah, listen, both of them did incredible. Michael Wilson's looked great. I hope that Michael Wilson continues to sustain value for the remainder of season. Again, I'm really hoping that more than anything, he is a late season add that wins us chips. I'm hoping that his utilization will not diminish even in the return of Marvin Harrison. Even though I do believe that will be the case, I'm hoping that it won't be significant enough to knock him out of the top 36 conversation there. As for Emmanuel Wilson, man, what a delivery. What an absolute monster game. I mean, that just goes to show, guys, after Josh Jacobs is gone and done with the Packers, whoever ends up taking over that RB1 role for the Packers in the future, get ready for it, because that player is going to be a top 12 option again. So, just the history of Matt LaFleur's attack in the running game has just been so damn successful year over year since he's arrived in 2018? Thoughts on the pass run defense now without Milton Williams? Chase Brown looked good. Yeah, Chase Brown is one of the craziest stories of the year, to where he completely has flipped 180 from where he started to where he's been as of late. We'll keep an eye on that run stop defense, because I think that they'll still potentially kind of improve upon it as we go forward here. Nice guy says, definitely worried about Purdy weekly. Probably stream in week 14. Anonymous says, drop 1, Spears, Dobbs, Franklin, Godwin, and BTJ. Troy Franklin can't be dropped. He's far too good. I think BTJ is just off of name value and potential, can't be dropped either. I think Spears is droppable because, again, the offense just is not functionable. I think Dobbs is still a keep here, and I think Godwin is still a keep. I think Spears ends up being the drop in that circumstance. All right, let's hear. Bench says, greetings and salutations. Would you rather drop Parker Washington, Tootin, Worthy, or Monangai? I don't think Parker Washington's done anything for us to consider dropping him. In a full PPR, he's at over 15 fantasy points in 3 straight games, 3 of the last 4 games. So Parker Washington should never, ever be considered a potential drop. As for Bayshall Tootin, he's a handcuff with potential high upside. Monangai is clearly the RB2, and he's earned that role. I think Worthy is the one that kind of makes me a little bit more contingent on the potential where, okay, if he's not going to, lug if he's not going to lug his own share to where he's even startable for you, or you would even consider him to start, if Rashee Rice continues to be healthy, Worthy's probably the drop here. Booger, what's up? It says, like number 35. Come on, guys and gals, hit the like button. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's all good. Is Rams defense set it and forget it? I would say yes. I think just alone because of the offense and the leads that they take, they force opposing offenses to have to take risks in the second half, throw for majority of games, and the pass rush gets after them. I'm just waiting for the day in which Aaron Donald says he's coming back. I'm legitimately waiting for Aaron Donald to say, yep, I'm coming back, and I'm making a playoff run. Because the way that they're showing Aaron Donald utilizing 160-pound dumbbells now after being retired is unbelievable. Brother looks like he's getting ready to start for the Rams. It's unbelievable. Yes, the Rams are a set it and forget it defense. Looking at the upcoming schedule, the only game in which I ever put into question whether or not I'm going to play them is Detroit Week 15. But honestly, I'm not even worried about that too much. I'm going to play them against Carolina, Arizona, Seattle, and Atlanta. So I might as well roll them against Detroit. I could consider maybe making a pivot option there, but I don't think it's necessary. Let's see here. Half PPR Week 13, Neal versus Miami or Judkins versus San Francisco. Look, I kind of want to wait and see what Neal can produce at a full expansion of within the role. For now, I'll lean towards Judkins if he's healthy, but we'll see. Tim Wood, what's up, brother? Says, I have Cook, Bijan, Rico, Brees, Amon-Ra, J-Jet. We have Pittman, Diggs, half PPR, trade offer for CMC. However, I need to give 2 for 1. Diggs/Cook or Hall/Justin Jefferson. That's an interesting question. If you were going to theoretically trade for Christian McCaffrey, I would feel a little bit more. Let me see where James Cook's schedule looks like going forward. So here's the current situation. I believe, that conventional wisdom would tell me to take this side. But I am so legitimately afraid of JJ McCarthy that I think I probably trade away Justin Jefferson. So for now, that's the direction I go in. Because here's the reality, right? How many games has JJ McCarthy started now? Let's see here. He has started a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. I have learned in 6 games I cannot trust him to support Justin Jefferson at the rate at which we need to. And if we're at that point in 6 games, I don't know if the upcoming schedule changes my mind on it when he has to take on, teams that, again, even though they're not great, overall defenses, I just don't know if I can trust the quarterback. So for now, I think I probably just ship off Justin Jefferson, as crazy as it sounds. Should I drop Montgomery for Monangai? At this point, I think you should. Montgomery is not being exposed to touchdowns because Gibbs is just taken fully over. Thoughts on Seattle's backfield after this week? K9 is back. I mean, at this point, I think K9 and Charbonnet are still kind of where they were. RB2s. That's it. That's what they are. And I think they'll continue to be that. I think, obviously, because of the necessity for touchdowns, Charbonnet is still a low-end RB2, but I think what Kenneth Walker has done in terms of overall expansion of usage within the receiving game kind of moves him up a little bit slightly. Anonymous says, thanks, bro. Would be nice for Godwin to have a little comeback. Managed to grab him off of waivers last week. Yeah, that would be great. Alfredo, what's up? Says Discord. Okay, let me check what you have here, brother. All right, Freddie, what do we have here? So Freddie says, is anyone worth dropping for Higgins or pick up Samson as a Judkins owner? Looking at the roster as a whole, so you've got James Cook, Kareem Hunt, Puka Nacua, Parker Washington, Michael Wilson. Brother, you've got a team, huh? Emmanuel Wilson, Travis Kelce. Freddie, your team is just... Buck Irving, Quentin Johnson, Quinshon Judkins, Deebo Samuel, Kenneth Walker. Yeah, no. None of these players are worth dropping in order to try to pick up Higgins. Jaden Higgins is just not ever going to start for you. I don't see it. So in this case, I don't believe it to be the case. So we'll just keep it what we're having. Yeah, we'll just keep what we have. There's not a necessity to have to make that move. Thank you. All right, continuing on. Let's see here. We took care of that. How can I enter the Discord? Okay, yeah, the Discord is specifically for Patreon users only. So if you ever hear or see someone say, hey, Andrew, check Discord, it's because they're already members of the Patreon and I've added them on Discord so that I can add them to the overall Discord community server. And then additionally on top of that, individually DM them if they have any questions. Thoughts on Henderson? I was at the game and it was torture watching Ramondre vulture red zone attempts. Yeah, I mean, even with the red zone attempts being vultured, again, it's not really much of a surprise. I would have just assumed that in the 18 attempts he would have had a little bit more potential for success. My biggest concern right now is the fact that both of the left side of the offensive line of the New England Patriots went down with injury. The left tackle with a knee injury and the left guard with an ankle injury. And I'm expecting both of them to probably miss this week, and then they'll have a week 14 bye, and then we'll reevaluate starting week 15 for the fantasy playoffs. But that in itself, the left side of the offensive line not having any starters going forward until further notice, very much so a concern with the Henderson potential there. But, I mean, again, still very talented and still given ample opportunity, so not too worried. Jacoby Brissett has been good. I have Chase Brown, Joe Burrow stashed, not sure who to start. As of right now, yeah, Jacoby has not just been good. He's been incredible. I mean, just putting it into perspective, let me pull the stat real quick while we're on the topic of just how good he has been. Like, he's done enough this season to secure that he is going to be a backup quarterback every single year for the remainder of, the next probably 10 years, genuinely. That's how long, he'll probably end up continuing to be a backup in the league. But looking at what Brissett has done of late, do I want to play him against Tampa Bay or do I want to play Burrow against... I feel like playing Burrow is... Conventional wisdom would tell me to play Burrow because I know that the history of success that Burrow has had against that Baltimore defense proves to where he is the better play. But yeah, as of right now, I would say if I'm going to pick between the two, I'd probably lean Burrow and just go with the potential of him just lighting up that defense. Even though it is a little bit of a stretch there comparatively to Jacoby, lighting up Tampa Bay, I think I'm willing to take the risk. Let's see here. Since Brian Thomas might come back, should I drop Parker Washington for John Mechie or Luther Burden? No, I think that Parker Washington's role isn't really going to be impacted by Brian Thomas. Again, we got to remember that Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't get much slot receiving utilization. I think the return of Brian Thomas does equivalent. I think his return does effectively diminish Jacoby Myers. That's what it does more than anything. So I wouldn't go as far as the dropping Parker. Jerome Hill says, I'm up against Daniel Jones, Chase Brown, Etienne, Lamb, McMillan, Gadsden, K9, Borgals, and Ravens defense. I have Brissett, Gibbs, JT, Rice, Diggs, Theo Johnson, Woody Marks, Badgley. Patriots defense benches Pearsall, Quentin Johnson, Sutton Pierce, Tracy, and Juwan Johnson. Pretty good looking team as a whole. Obviously, you're going up against that's a pretty stacked roster as well. But, when you have Jonathan Taylor and Jahmyr Gibbs, brother, I feel like you're going to win every week because one of the two are going for 40 points. Over the course, the last, I'm not even joking, 6 weeks, I think you've had a 35-point running back minimum every week. So, at this point, pretty solid team. I think you're in a good shot here to figure it out. Is the Tootin season cooked? Potentially. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Patreon available in Brazil, only US, right? I have no clue. Let's see here. Is Patreon available in Brazil? Yes, Patreon is available in Brazil. Yeah, it should be. Again, I don't know. So, just off of the one singular Google search, it said yes. Brissett or Caleb, though? Brissett or Caleb? I think at that point, taking on the Eagles, I'd rather just play Brissett. Thoughts on the squad, Andrew? Lamar, CMC, Henry, Diggs, Olave, Ferguson, Javonte, Wan'Dale Robinson, benches Debo, Sutton, Tootin, Chris Rodriguez. Also have the Eagles defense for week 15. In regards to the squad as a whole, again, when you have Christian McCaffrey, Henry, Diggs, Olave, Ferguson, Javonte, Wan'Dale Robinson, that's a really, really strong team. This is just the X factor. Unfortunately, your X factor has become Lamar, a 2-time MVP, which at this point, again, history would tell us he's more likely to bounce back than any other player. So I'm not too worried about his situation. You should be fine, brother, with a really strong team ahead. I was rolling with Flacco and an enemy in league stashed Burrow. I dropped Flacco for Brissett. Nick's relegated to backup duty. Yeah, at this point, Brissett, yeah, he really is that good. Let's see here. Middle finger to all the content creators who said to use Bayshall Tootin. I feel like you're probably just a little bit upset that he didn't play well. But hey, he was given decent opportunity share. In terms of the overall utilization and the expansion of his role, you just have to look at stats. When you're getting more snaps, when you're getting more touches, ultimately the opportunity's there. It's just a matter of, is the blocking going to be well done? Is that all that kind of stuff going to be expanded? Ultimately, it's a good call. Just unfortunately didn't live up to the expectations that we put on him. Should I trade Bryce? I'm assuming you mean Breece Hall and Wan'Dale Robinson for Zay Flowers. Oh, wow. In the event in which you were to get CeeDee Lamb, if you have the running back depth to justify it, I don't mind moving Breece Hall and Zay Flowers to get CeeDee Lamb, but only if the running back depth that you have on roster is just justifiable at that point. Both Patriots linemen dodge season-ending injuries. Thank to God. They'll be back in. We'll have to wait and see. It's going to be a tough situation there for the running game. Any worry about Jaylen Warren? Not really. I think it's become a two-headed monster. Is that something that I'm too worried about? No. He's still going to be good because he's got great matchups ahead. And, of course, they're a run-first team. AZ, Atlanta, Colts, almighty Los Angeles Chargers defense, please rank. If we're talking about this week in specific, I don't like the idea of playing the Chargers defense. Again, they're really not great at stopping the run. So even in a matchup against, the Vegas Raiders, it scares me. Like, genuinely, I would typically play anybody against Geno, but man, that scares the crap out of me. So for now, if I'm looking at those available options, I feel like the best potential play here is either Atlanta versus Tyrod Taylor or Arizona Cardinals versus Tampa Bay, assuming Bridgewater takes over. Thank you. Franklin or Sutton, keep one. I'm genuinely going to keep Franklin. I think at this point, I've seen enough to where I know I should keep him. Sup, Andrew, got in late. Came to drop a like at least. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Caesar. Philly, number 1 defense for week 15. Good work looking ahead. Let's see here. Eagles, number 1 defense in week 15, you say? Let's see what we have here in terms of the potential of the Eagles. Philadelphia takes on Las Vegas. Yeah, good call. Good call. Good looks, good looks. All right, question number 1, says Gerardo. Says, Part 1, Dynasty half PPR. Let me just preface really quickly. I'm not much of a Dynasty connoisseur myself. So if you're asking a question regarding trading picks, I would usually often tell you that if you're in a winning position right now, you've got a win-loss record that's relatively solid. You look like you win the chip. I would mortgage my future to win the chip. So I will just preface with that. So this is my roster, and I'll wait for the second half of that. What's up? Tim Schwartz says, trade Jonathan Taylor and Bowers for Kittle and Gibbs. That's a really good question. Let me look at the upcoming schedule for Gibbies. Okay, here's the thing. I prefer Kittle over Bowers. And I would honestly, at this point, equate... If you're playing a full PPR, I'll just take the Gibbs side. If it's a half PPR, I could probably just hold and be happy, or just say that it's an even-sided trade and go whichever one you want. But if it's a full PPR, I think we have to take the Gibbs side at this point. Is Adams and Waddle in a full PPR championship caliber wide receiver duo to carry me to the chip? It should. I mean, again, Adams scores every single touchdown. And then on top of that, Waddle's been incredible without Tyreek. So, yeah, I think it is more than necessary to be able to get you to the chip. Rate Darren Waller's strength of schedule is solid. Would you start? I mean, Darren Waller's strength of schedule in terms of fantasy points per game allowed to opposing tight ends is as good as it gets. He's got a top 10 schedule going forward. So very much so, if he can get himself a couple games under his belt to where we know that he is still going to be highly utilized within the offense, then at that point I'd be confident to start him in the fantasy playoffs against some of ththose teams. Burrow, Herbert, Brissett, cut one. I mean, I'm cutting Brissett. I think the other two options are probably better off in the rest of the season kind of conversation. Franklin or McLaurin. At this point, I have to play with the consistency of Franklin. Unless I know who's playing quarterback for the Washington Commanders every game rest of the season, I cannot make the declaration to where it could be McLaurin, excuse me. Nico or Michael Wilson. Wilson's on fire, full PPR. Yeah, look, in the event in which we have Marvin Harrison miss another game here, I'm going to highly consider Michael Wilson to be in that top 6 conversation, considering this most recent week, I had him ranked top 12, but I would continue to move him upward, especially against Tampa Bay secondary. Any Green Bay locals with info on Reed, week 14 maybe? I mean, he's been practicing. That's as far as I'm aware. So practice reports, I think, in my opinion, are going to be a pretty huge indicator as to whatever his potential ends up being. But this most recent week, he got himself a practice under his belt. So in the event in which potentially, fingers crossed, he can get a couple days of practice this week, I think by week 14 should be available. Hi, Andrew. Drop 2, Keenan Allen, Ricky Pearsall, Monangai, Parker Washington, Tracy. Is Devin Neal worth the number 1 pickup? I think he's worth it, especially if you need RB help. I don't think you can drop Tracy. I don't think you can drop Monangai. I don't think you drop Parker Washington. I think genuinely these are your 2 drops. If I was an NFL GM, I'd be calling Carolina to say, what's the asking price for Sarah McMillan until Young is replaced, or maybe head coach or OC generational talent. Yeah, I mean, listen, the offseason, preseason kind of draft news was that Sean McVay was incredibly high on Tedero McMillan and wanted to trade for him. Just the exact same news came out the year before with Brock Bowers, that McVay wanted to go and trade for him, but the asking price was too much. Genuinely, could we just get one of these really good players on the Rams? Like, could we just, why not? Like, couldn't we just get it done? I was under the impression that the Rams were all about like fuck those picks and just send them away. That's what they did to win a chip last time out. I don't know why they didn't continue to explore that. Worried about Bijan, or is he still top 5 due to his talent? I mean, the talent itself should carry him, but it's obviously very much so worrisome. Luckily, they're able to score as an offense with Kirk. So, that is a solid thing that Cousins can at least help them move the football, but still very much so concerned. Hopefully, the return of London is this week to at least get this offense to be a little bit more notably kind of pass, I guess, efficient, to where to open up more opportunities for Bijan. My team is relatively strong overall, but my weakness is in my opinion, is the RB duo between Etienne and Warren. But even then, aren't that bad. I agree, they're not bad at all. Etienne continues to play well at an incredibly high rate. Jaylen Warren coming off of a week, yes, in which the week prior against Cincy did end up getting injured, so I don't really hold that too much against him. But this week, of course, falls into the end zone, continues to play well, so I'm not too worried about those two. I prefer Loop, Kaimi overall over Aubrey rest season available. Yeah, Loop is for sure going to be the guy that I would continue to prefer. All right, guys. I think that's what we're going to call it here. Again, we've been live for about 58 minutes. Typically want to go ahead and live stream for about an hour. So I appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel. Again, I'll be back tomorrow with RB rankings. Of course, live streaming tomorrow night to go ahead and solidify anything waiver wire opinionated. Also, do not forget that this upcoming Thursday, of course, we have Thanksgiving. So do not forget that on Thursday, we will have three games over the course of that day. So I'll be live streaming here on the channel starting on Thursday morning, 7 a.m. PST. So if you have any questions, I'll have up-to-date rankings for all positions, running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, kicker, and defense for that given Thursday live stream. And of course, we'll have another live stream on Friday prior to the Black Friday game between the Eagles and Bears. We'll have a live stream on Saturday afternoon and then a live stream on Sunday morning. So again, if you guys want to stay up to date on all that information, be sure to swing on by, keep the notifications on. Additionally, if you guys want rankings, you can find it via the Patreon like we've talked about before. You can ask me any and all questions in regards to whether it is waiver wire pickups, trade questions, starter sit questions via the Patreon. Additionally, we'll get access to the Patreon only exclusive Discord server, and of course get rankings every Thursday and Sunday. But if you guys want to go ahead and look for the more, I guess, financially efficient, kind of way, you can always check out the Betr sign up potential promotion here, where you can sign up today using code Andrew. All you have to do is deposit a first $10. They make a first-time play minimum of $1, and you'll be eligible to get those rankings sent to you from my email directly to yours every single Sunday morning. All you have to do is make sure you're eligible in the state of California. I mean, not the state of California. In the United States, California is, I guess, technically one of those states, but you'll also get a free $10 when you sign up using code Andrew. Thank you, guys. I appreciate y'all. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cue the music. Have a great rest of your night. I'll see you guys tomorrow talking about all 36 running backs. Peace. I just realized that Gerardo sent in a super. Okay, Gerardo, I found your question. Part 2. Okay, by the way, the camera's already off. The lights already got turned off. I only just realized that you sent in a question here. So let me just go ahead and let's just talk through this really quickly, okay? So in the case of your 2-part question, I saw your roster to begin with. It says it's a 2-part question. Second part, Dynasty half PPR, Travis Hunter, Mike Evans, Golden, Royals, Luther Burden, McBride, Loveland, Schultz, Otten, Aubrey, Dicker, Reichard. Which 3 to drop to make room for returning IR plus 2026 rookies? Okay, so looking at the roster as a whole, across top to bottom, if we're talking about the future of your season and team, I believe Jalen Royals is probably a guy that I'm looking to pivot off of. Typically, if you're not able to be effective or at least kind of get into the rotation of the Kansas City offense early within your rookie season, or at least midway through, you're not able to breach. I mean, I just don't know if it's worth it at that point to hold him. Yeah, at this point, I think that's number 1. Looking at other potential drops here, I'm not dropping those players. Let me see what else you have here. So you have Prescott, you have Williams, you have Joe Burrow, you have Brissett. It's a super flex league, so we cannot drop any of those players. You have Bijan, you have Gibbs, you have Vidal, you have Aaron Jones, you have Brashard Smith, you have Jaden Blue, Chase, Abuka, McMillan, Flowers, Adunze, Tucker, Franklin. In my opinion, I think Brashard Smith is also technically droppable, primarily because I do anticipate after this season, Pacheco not going to be re-signed. I think Hunt is not going to be re-signed, and I think they're going to go either draft a running back with high draft capital or sign one off of the free agency, to which I don't think Brashard Smith is someone that we want to have on roster. And then looking at the rest of that field, not really too worried about those players, to which at that point I look at the kickers here, and I feel like Aubrey and Dicker can start for you every game forever. So maybe Reichard, Royals, and Brashard Smith are the guys that take the first axe as of this moment. Outside of them, I think everybody else can contribute. Yeah, I think that's the way which I go about it, Gerardo. Okay, thank you again. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Drop Dallas Goedert for Waller. I wouldn't go as to that far. I would just try to pick up Waller and put him on my IR spot until he's taken off the IR. Alrighty. Jerome Hill says, why is Lawrence still the quarterback for the Jaguars? Real question. Aren't there better QBs out there? Here's the thing. In the National Football League, you can't replace a quarterback even if they're bad if you don't have a pivoting option. So what I mean by that is that a lot of the teams in the NFL unfortunately became victim of the price is the price. And what I mean by that is that the quarterback contracts became so expensive and everybody came off of their contracts in kind of a fashion to where like Tua, Trevor Lawrence, players like that didn't technically need to get $50 million a year, just had to, because those organizations were like, well, if we don't have Tua on roster, where do we go? Are we going to draft a quarterback in the late first? There's nobody that we need on that potential thing, or unless we're going to trade for a potential pick. That's why a lot of the organizations like Seattle, pivoting to Geno after Russell Wilson, then going to Sam Darnold. That's kind of the way to do it. Now, I understand they utilize, second round draft capital to bring in a backup quarterback here. That may be the future, but in this case, yeah, it is a legit question. But for now, hopefully Lawrence can figure it out in the future. Otherwise, they're stuck with his contract. They owe him way too much money for him to play for any other team. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Peace.